Hear the gospel of Easter as it's recorded by St. Mark, chapter 16, verses 1 through 7. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, brought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb? That was the question that was on the minds of these three women as they walked along on their way to the tomb. That was the topic of conversation. Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb? That was a good question, but it had no real good answers. Bless these women. They seem to be the only ones who are remaining faithful, everyone except perhaps Joseph of Arimathea. The rest had deserted Jesus. The women had been there on the scene when Jesus was crucified. They had seen him die. They had seen the tomb and how his body was laid and the stone rolled in front of the tomb. And now they're on their way back to the tomb with spices that they had purchased to anoint the body of Jesus. That was a very practical duty in that day, just to anoint and prepare the body for burial. And I am sure for them it was an act of loving devotion, kind of a very meaningful ritual as they were tending the body of Jesus. His body would have been really the only remaining physicality of Jesus, and they were very much devoted to him. And so they were on their way back to do what they could. But right now, they're concerned about something they cannot do. It's a situation, a state of affairs of critical significance. It's that stone. And it's a very large situation that's too big for them. Do you ever have situations in your life that are too big for you? The women are confronted by a circumstance. Do you know what a circumstance is? It's something that stands around, circumstance. Something that surrounds and affects everything else. It's not the real issue. It's a secondary accompaniment. But it's something that surrounds the real issue and just seems to contain and control and hold everything in. And these women have a circumstance. And it's that stone, a very large circumstance. You see, they're not coming to anoint the stone. The stone isn't the real issue. It's just that this circumstantial stone is just messing everything up and controlling everything and holding everything in. Do you have circumstances in your life? I might ask that together, do we have circumstances as a church sometimes that just seem to hold us in and control us? These women are facing an obstacle. An obstacle is something that obstructs and hinders progress. It's not the real issue, but it gets in the way. And it becomes a hindrance. It's a block. It's that stone. And it's a very large obstacle. It's too big for the three of them together. And it stands there between them and the body of Jesus, and there's no way they are able to anoint the body of Jesus until this rock of an obstacle is removed. Do you ever face obstacles in your life? Things that hinder and prevent progress and perhaps just seems to stymie your spiritual development, prevent you from growing, coming to the true fulfillment of your life as God would have it to be. Do we face some obstacles as a church? Those stones. And if I may say it, those damned stones. They can be so real, can't they? As the women are making their way to the tomb to anoint the body of Jesus, it's that stone that just seems to occupy them. It's a situation too big for them. It's a circumstance that just surrounds everything and contains and controls and holds them in, and it's an obstacle that just gets in the way and blocks their progress. And that's what they seem to keep talking about. Mark says, quote, "They had been saying to each other, 'Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?'" That's what's been on their mind. That has been occupying them. It's amazing, isn't it, how much our lives can be occupied and ordered by situations that just pop up, by circumstances. They really aren't what our lives are about, but they just seem to confuse and contain and control. And by obstacles that just keep getting in the way and hinder us from getting on. Sometimes, if we will, we may take stock of our lives and ask some of the big questions as Christians, as followers of Christ, those who are called to seek the kingdom of God and His righteousness and allow some of the other things to take secondary place as Jesus taught us. Who am I? Where am I going in life? And what is my life really about? And as we get those things clear in our minds, and then very often if we also begin to consider all the situations that have altered the direction of our lives, and the circumstances that have just changed things, and the obstacles that have just gotten in the way and stymied us from moving forward toward what we know to be the purpose and the goal and the desire of our lives, and the desire of God for us. That can be discouraging to recognize those things. It can be troubling. And perhaps should be. Does it ever trouble us when that happens to us? It troubles me that churches very often can be so troubled, and I've seen it many times. Now, know that when we're talking about situations and circumstances and obstacles, we're not talking about lame excuses. I mean, silly small things like when the kid tells the teacher that the dog ate his homework. You know, you've heard that. Or the nice lady that told the minister, giving him an excuse why she couldn't make that meeting that she missed. She says, "I'm sorry, Reverend, but I had a previous engagement at the last minute." That's a true one. It actually happened. We're not talking about that kind of thing. We're talking about real, unpreventable situations, unforeseen circumstances, unchangeable obstacles. We all have them, and we have to deal with them. They do affect us, sometimes as individuals, sometimes as families, sometimes together as a church body. It's true sometimes when we have to face these things and they confound us so that in the process we do learn some things that we might not have learned otherwise. And sometimes we end up growing in ways that we might not have other ways. But the point, I think, is this. We must not live our lives simply responding to all these things, as Jesus called them. We must not live our lives and allow our lives to be ordered by situations and circumstances and obstacles. When we do that, we just don't get very far in our spiritual journey. We don't grow very much in our relationship to God. As churches, we will not progress very far because there always will be situations, forever circumstances, and you can bet on obstacles. They become the issue of the moment, and they always want to take precedent. And then it makes it very difficult for us to really set priorities because all these other things have already taken precedent.